Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Did the live stream start? Is that good? Okay, awesome. So we are just really grateful to be in community with everybody to share in stories about the Colorado River Basin, as well as other water work that the panelists and moderator are involved in. My name is Suri Tofignia. I am an assistant professor in the JMP department. I teach video production. If you're not from MSU, JMP means journalism, media production. We also call it JUMP. So this was a vision that we've had probably about maybe 15 years ago to start bringing people together in community where we could use media, art, storytellers, people of the earth, the land, the water, to come together to start to get us to understand that we don't live in a silo, that the water flows from our community into many, many, many other communities. So I just want to acknowledge that MSU campus is located on the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Lakota, Ute, and dozens of other tribes who've traveled along these waterways way before I was born. I look old, but I'm not millennia. I also want to give gratitude towards MSU for giving us the funding through the Dean's Innovation Grant to bring together this panel, as well as Office of Diversity and Inclusion for providing our delicious tokabe lunch. So hopefully some of you got to experience some indigenous cooking. All of the food is sourced from indigenous communities, from Minnesota to Arizona to locally to all over. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then I also want to thank Lorian Dancer, who's back in the back. She's graduating in May, and so she was hired as a student coordinator to help us put together this event. So thank you, Lorian. She's done a great job. We've also had a planning committee from many, many departments. Gabriel, Nona, Desiree, and Shayla, who've come together with me on Zoom. I've only met them a few times in person. Volunteers are all around us, our support team. Many people couldn't be here today, but it really takes a village, as they say, to put on things like this, including yourself for showing up. It's hard to get out of the house some days, but I'm glad that you're all here with us. And those of you watching from who knows where, welcome. Share the link. There's some students around. I also teach, and we've been using this as an opportunity to get real-world experience, to give them hands-on skills. So right now you can see some students are filming in the front, some students are filming in the back, some students are roaming around. They might be asking you questions on breaks. If you want to share a little bit about water, why you came today, we would love to document your stories. And those stories will live on our website that is behind our camera person, Jimmy, that you can visit. So again, thank you for coming. I just wanted to say about that much today and just honor that you were here for a reason. Please listen with open hearts, open minds. There'll be time for Q&A. Our moderator will be moderating the discussion. There's hopefully going to be a little time now, but afterwards we encourage you to stay. We'll have coffee, tea, lemonade showing up in a little bit, and we're going to re-break the room so we can get to know who you are a little bit and have you form parts of the conversation, because the goal is to carry this forward, right? We want to be hopeful, optimistic that we can actually protect these rivers and waters as we move on. So I just want to see how many people are from an MSU course. Who was here because their teacher said you had to be here? Awesome. So thank you for coming. What classes are represented in the space today? Anyone can scream out. Environmental science and resources. Yeah, ES. If you're from ES, like, give some kind of, come on, you made it. Okay, any other classes? Any JMP students? Woo, where's that? I didn't pay you. Okay, if you're from video production process, I want to hear you. Yay, okay. Anyone else make it with classes today? We had a couple cancellations. It's a busy week. So that's all I want to say. I want to invite my sister Roxana up. She's going to share some short words from her community and sing a song for us to help us get grounded in this space. So she came all the way from Chicago and she survived Amtrak.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Well, I want to share with the sacred water that we have here. Many years ago, probably 20 years ago, we have family coming up to Chicago. They came from Mexico City with water and with a prayer. And that prayer came from the Hopi people. They went down the rivers. They were sick. all the way to Mexico City in Chiapas, coming back. And they gathered a little bit of water of each river that was sick and put them all together and take them to our ceremonies. So some of us were in charge of, not in charge, but we took the responsibility to remember our water. For us, water is our mother. And so to remember her like that and remember that she, in some places, is sick, and is sick because we have neglected our responsibility as humans to take care of her. And she takes care of us without any, she is so giving. She doesn't charge for that. But so this prayer was to remember her. And so this water came to me in Chicago many years ago. And a song was shared with me to remember our mother that is here present, and to share that with the world, with people that want to listen to our mother and to go back to our ways to learn how to take care of her. So if we take care of her, she will take care of us. And so this song came through the medicine of the desert for the peyote road. And through the peyote, our grandmother, this song came to me. And I'm going to share that with you. Yes.
From the women of Anishinaabe Nation.
Nation. So if I'll go around, I want to give it back to you. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Voy comiendo medicina por este camino rojo, con el rostro amarillo y las flechas en el hombro. Ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, ya no wanna, hey, hey. Thank you.
Now I pass it over to Reuben Crus, who's helping moderate the panel today.
Kamdustek ni miwahotek nya tohoyo yampe miwahotek nya mitha family kamak nya vakpa navayak ni miwahotek. I just want to say thank you all to everyone here, everyone that came to share time with us, and just give a little bit of a personal introduction into how we got involved in this Colorado River Basin talk. Through the Waters Connect Us, and how these movements have grown over time. I'm from a community down south in near so-called Phoenix, Arizona. They call us the Gila River Indian community. It's multiple nations living on one area outside of so-called Phoenix, Arizona. We're a Colorado River tribe, Piipaash, connected to all the Colorado River tribes. So I thought it would be appropriate that being towards the end of the river, I come back and have this conversation near where the river begins and understand that this river, as I see it and as we know it to be in our worldview, is our lifeline. All of our communities, our names are described in relation to the water. The people further down south of the river, the people north of the river, the people that it runs through the river, the people that walk further down south. You know, these are all of our names, descriptive names position us towards the river. And as a river tribe, being in a desert, Phoenix is like the 5th largest city in the country now. A city that should by all rights not even exist because there's not enough water in that area to sustain the amount of growth that exists there. And a lot of it exists off of this Colorado River water, which at the end reaches Gulf of California, supposed Gulf of California, goes back to the ocean. That's our lifeline. From the beginning to the end, our spirits follow that lifeline and go back to the ocean. And that Colorado River water doesn't even reach its destination anymore, you know. It doesn't make it all the way there. And whatever water does make it, it's probably not Colorado River water anymore. It's water from some other region. So I kind of wanted to just start the idea of like changing our definitions and using this language that really isn't any one of our languages, but using this language to define these worldviews of people who live along the river. Because the language means so many different things. And in our worldview, like a river is alive, a river is a living being, a river has its own spirit, and we're connected to that river. The river is alive and in motion, you know? So doing the research and learning about how many of these rivers run free, you know, I'm like, wow, like, you know, some of you know how many dams exist in the world and how many rivers actually run free still. There's very little, if there are, you know? So as a river tribe, that's my definition. I define myself by my position to the river. So I'm also a poet, you know, and I try to use these words to define myself. So how do I define myself as a river tribe with no river? You know, that was the conversation I've been having myself. Like, maybe I can ask groups of people, like, how does a river tribe without a river begin to define itself again? You know, our medicines, our songs, our animals, our ceremonies, just our food, the way of life, the way we dress, how we carry, you know, how we transport, everything about that. When it disappears, you're left without an identity. And growing up as a generation without the river there, my grandmother grew up swimming in the rivers. All of our peoples prior to that swam in the rivers, grew up knowing how to swim because of the rivers, knowing our location in the world because of the rivers. So being part of the first generation without a river, I'm like, wow. You know, like, where, it's still underground. I'm not trying to say the water is gone, right? But there's a sense of identity when you can go and pray at the water, you know, when you can be next to the water. And here where the waters come, I was like, this is a very important time because this is when the rivers come back, right? This is when all that snowmelt comes back to our waterways, comes back to us, you know. And so, you know, there's this fool out there who's starting this, ending the war on showers or something like that, you know what I mean? There's a whole mentality where, like, water's just this abundant source all of a sudden, you know? We can just live reckless, but the water talks and we listen. And it was important to hear what my sister said, because when you hear those words about people going to pray for those who are sick, you're thinking humans maybe. We're human-centric. We're like, oh, these people are sick. But she was talking about the rivers, the waters. You know, these waters are our lifelines, you know? So the rivers are sick, then most assuredly we are sick, right? And so that's the point. They were like, okay, if the rivers are sick now, we need to pray for them. We need to understand our relationship to them. And I don't know how to define that in modern terms, but I know through time we've always found refuge and our sense of belonging and who we are through each other. Throughout this whole entire world, we've always related to where we are in relations to other humans, land, environment, you know. So there's no reason why we should change after a blink of an eye when this order, cosmic order, has been working so well, you know. But when you get to a place such as myself and you don't have any ground to stand on, your roots are almost disappearing. You're trying to define yourself. So I have to let myself go to the river and allow that almost to define me. So like I said, my river is gone. And as I travel further up, our ritual migrations to go further up that river, I have to basically find who I am, as I was saying to these other speakers here, like who I am through the river that you may still come in contact with. You still have access to that water. And maybe they don't, because that water is shrinking as we're learning, you know? There's 3,000 plus feet of water in these reservoirs, certain level, they don't produce hydroelectricity no more. After that, they become a dead pool, you know? I'm not talking Wade Wilson, I'm not talking Marvel Comics, I'm talking like there's no more life coming from that water no more. And as we as indigenous people, if that living life is movement and motion, then by all means, it's already being laid to rest because it's not moving anymore. It's stagnant. It comes at our request when we need electricity in Phoenix, when we need crops watered in the Imperial Valley, or, you know, cattle, alfalfa, grass, all these things. So I'm like, how do I define myself in terms of water? I want to know this relationship that people have with water so we can define ourselves. Or maybe I won't be a river tribe anymore. There'll be a new word in our language to describe who we are. But I could always find refuge and solace in the fact that these people are still making prayers in their own languages all around the world for the water. And so I don't know what it's like there. I don't know the stories in all the places. I know they're all connected. That's why we chose to say the waters connect us. Because fighting in Phoenix, there was nobody around to help us. And the relatives that came to help us came from the Oglala Aquifer region, you know? And I'm like, how are we going to bridge this fight between us? It's like, what fight between us? We're fighting the same fight for water. So if the waters connect us, then don't look at these man-made boundaries that connect us, or these states or whatever. You know, it's like, who's below you? Who's above you? What prayer am I putting into the water that's going to reach these people down here? You know, and I wanted to maybe introduce myself to these relatives along the way so that we have this connection, so we can define ourselves through each other and just remember that if each and every one of us is a drop of water, then we are bringing the river back together in full force. You know, they say bodies are mostly made up of water anyway. So how do we treat ourselves? You know, how do we learn these ways to purify this water and sing to the water? You know, pray to the water. Pray to these things that we don't even consider in our worldview because something that came X amount of years ago tells us this is the only way. Well, the ways that existed here before are still here. And for those that are curious and want to listen and learn, like that's the meaning behind this conversation, was to ask us, you know, who we are in relation to each other and in relation to our water, this life giver. So with the energy being the way it is around the world and people afraid of drought and knowing things aren't going to last the way it's going to last forever, we know this is the water that's always been here. You know, it's always going to be here, and how we treat it is up to us. But regardless, it's the only water we have. We're drinking it. This is our life. So if we don't understand that anytime soon, then it's pretty bleak. So introducing myself and telling you all where I am, you can imagine down south near towards Colorado River, the Gila River comes up from Phoenix, where the Salt River meets. I'm at the confluence of the Salt and the Gila before we go down to the Colorado River. That river comes up through Mojave, through these dams, right? So going up along, I wanted to ask these relatives, you know, if they could introduce themselves in relation to the water and let us know what waters are they around, Where are you at and situated between waters? What rivers are you connected to? Because some of them are tributaries that flow to this Colorado River, and it shows how we're all connected. And that's why we wanted to bring relatives here from different parts of the river to talk about our stories, share our stories, our struggles, and most importantly, our survival for the future. So we'll give our relatives some time here to kind of introduce themselves. You can imagine where they are on these rivers, listen to a couple of their stories. We'll ask questions, as much as we can, but the most important part is that we're here. The drops are connecting. We're forming a pool, a puddle, and this will carry on forward. So make sure that we hold these connections, right? Because this is the beginning. This is the pool of water that forms, to become a healthy drink of water, I hope. So I'm going to pass this along. We'll give our relatives some time to introduce themselves. Please give them all your attention. Write, take notes, learn, impart this information into us, because it's the way forward is by going back to this knowledge that we still possess. So I want to give everyone some time to introduce themselves, and I hope.
Thank you. That was very powerful. Thank you. My mama named me Patricia Catherine McCabe, and I was saying earlier, if I were to go into what all those names mean, it would be the history of the United States. But I'm not actually any Irish that I'm aware of, but it's a long story. But I was also given the name. I started practicing the Lakota spiritual way of life 35 years ago, and I was given the name Wiyakpa Najiwi, which translates roughly to womaning, standing, shining. But I come from Diné Nation. So I'll say She'e'ia, Tachi Nishli, Aro Ashi'i Bashishchi, Ma'rishkejne Dashanale, and Klauschi Dashiche, Gwataos Dani Nishli. So that's how we introduce ourselves. And to further muddy the waters, I live in Taos, New Mexico, close to the Red Willow people, and my grandchildren are being raised at Taos Pueblo in their traditional way. I set up this altar earlier when I was in here to speak to a class, and I just wanted to acknowledge this one here. Holy Mani Wachozane Wakan. We say this is our life. This is the one that binds all living things together as one family. And without it, we're really nothing. We can't live. And so we have to pay attention to this one. And this one's not only life, but it's alive, has consciousness. So every one of our ancestors, Western science calls it a closed system. I would love to know how my elders describe it, but they say, so, this water's been traveling around and around and around through all the life that's ever been. So I like to say Tyrannosaurus Rex had a drink of this water right here. and all the ancestors of all of the life everywhere. So that's also part of the life system. It's not just ocean, river, stream. It's also passed through every single life form. But we also say, for Indigenous people, we have the water present in our ceremonies. So our ceremonies are in this water, even for the peoples who are no longer here. The songs, the prayers, and the answers to prayers, the solutions to cooperation and collaboration, they're all here. So I just wanted to acknowledge this elder, and to notice that we say H2O and we think we know what we're talking about, but there's a lot more going on here. I don't think we can ever know everything that this one is. So I place this one here. I'm keeping this one here because I say this one's listening. So this one's going to listen to our words here today, but also just what's going on in your minds and hearts here too. I say that this one has that capacity to take that in as well. So when we're all done, I'm going to take this one out and pour it on the earth and ask her to take a good look at us. Like, this water, listening to where we're at, how we're thinking, what we're working with, what we want to know, what lifts our hearts and what's breaking our hearts right now. part of my heart is breaking right now. So this one has seen it all, you know. And we say, you know, indigenous timekeeping is different, it's much longer than Western science, even about human presence. So we say that, maybe you've heard different indigenous people say this is the fifth world or the sixth world, right? So we've passed through worlds, and this one has knowledge of how we did that. So when I'm in ceremony, I'm speaking on behalf of this one, I tell people, when you get low on faith, you can turn to this one, because this one has already walked through all of that with us. And so this one has knowledge, this one has comfort, this one has a solace for us of elder. So just want to acknowledge this one here. So I live in Taos, New Mexico, and so that's actually on the Rio Grande watershed. And so I'm relating to what you're saying about how the river doesn't actually travel all the way through anymore. And that's a difficulty, not only for the human beings, of course, but for all the life. And so, let's see, two things come to mind. One is that in our community, we have a system, I was just talking about it over at lunch, called the acequia system. Well, we use the Spanish word for it by and large in our community. So this isn't only indigenous community, this is inclusive of the Red Willow people, the Taos Pueblo people, but then there's also the town. And so I say, like everywhere, the water comes out of the mountain, you know, so we say in our little science books, they said, the ocean evaporates, goes up to the clouds. I say the mountains seduce the clouds over to drop the rain and the snow. That comes down. We have rivulets coming to streams, river down below, the base of the mountain running back into ocean. But again, I notice that in our science book, they never said, and that water is passing through every single life form as well. So it's taking in the consciousness of all the life. And I think it's also monitoring how we're doing, how it's going for each living thing. But so in Taos, no different there, that water running out of the mountains comes down across the Taos Valley, but the difference there is those waterways, they have names. And they have families that are associated with maintaining those ditches so that the water can flow freely. And it's a matter of family honor to keep that water flowing. It's a matter of family honor to make sure that that water passes through your part, to your neighbor's part, and to the next neighbor's part, next neighbor's part. And that's what made me fall in love with Taos, honestly, was to go out and work on the ditch. We're having ditch days right now up there to have the water flow. So we have this lifeblood arteries flowing across this entire valley, across the bioregion. And it's a system of cooperation and collaboration that I don't know where else they have one quite that big, and also between different ethnicities of peoples. And it's not driven by profit or money. It's, but it is a way of taking care of growing the food for animals and for humans. But also it's a way of connecting community and also connecting our hearts to the land and the water. So my son, Buck, was at Standing Rock. How many know Standing Rock in this room? Some, yeah. So that was a stand for the water by the some of the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota people. But in any case, so he was up there making a stand for that water, and but when he came home from there, he said, you know, Mom, the long-term water protection is this traditional water use in the valley, because if the people's hearts aren't connected to the water, they're not going to stand for it. They're not going to fight for this water. So in our valley, they're moving water rights around on paper, and this is a big problem because it's it's conceptualizing this holy being and saying, well, we can just add it up here on paper, and then we'll go and try to make it work out on the land. And this is where we're running into big problems. So right now they're talking about drilling 15 deep aquifer drilling rigs into our valley to access an aquifer that has never seen the light of day. And they say that they have the science to know that it'll be okay and what will happen, but I don't think we can know. So my son also made a stand for that water and occupied one of those drilling rigs. We had our own little mini Standing Rock in Taos, because he occupied that rig for 4 days and to draw attention to what was taking place in our valley. So I'll just also name that I just recently took on the stewardship. Our Hawaiian relatives call it land reunion, which I like better than land back. But we just took on stewardship of land at the base of one of our 4 sacred mountains, Sisnashine. And there is some very special water there, and I'm listening. I'm listening because the mountain and the water have instruction for us right now. And that's not instruction that you can learn in an institution like this, necessarily. It takes another kind of pace, another kind of attention, another kind of education, another kind of learning that has to do with this human body and the human spirit. But human beings have been doing that, making that relationship and finding that kind of listening for a long, 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 long time. We can do that. We have that capacity. We're built to have a broad spectrum of ways of knowing, not only just this intellect here. And we can't live our life through concept, through conceptualizing only. So just add that into this water mix. That's probably plenty to start out here. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to go next? Okay. Good afternoon. She'e Twadich Eatni Nishla, Sanabithni Bashishchi, Ki Ani Dashiche, Tohoglini Dashanala. My name is Leona Morgan, and I feel like that was. I feel like we're already in the middle of our talk, and we're just getting started. It's a very emotional topic, water and life, and all the stuff we're going to talk about. For my introduction, I'm going to just be really brief. I am Diné, and I grew up on the res. Right now I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I grew up in a very small community that wasn't contaminated per se from uranium. I'm going to talk a lot about uranium. And then I moved to Albuquerque for college, and then I learned about uranium and uranium mining and the nuclear industrial complex and all of these things much later in life. But I'm pretty sure that's what killed a lot of my family, and it's still hurting our people. So I will talk about some of the threats and the issues and nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. But really, my work, I started in 2007, and it was because of a threat to water. So there's this type of mining where they use water to mine, and so it's called ISL mining. And they do it already in some places, but they were proposing it in New Mexico, and that's how I got involved. I got involved in that fight, and that was in 2007, and I didn't realize I would still be fighting the same thing. You know, it's like 18 years later, so my fight can now vote or go buy a pack of cigarettes, I don't know. But so that's my background. I've been fighting this for a while, but not as long as some of our speakers here and all of the people at home who have been working on this a lot longer before me. And so in the anti-nuclear work, so I am Diné, but the movement of anti-nuke work is really largely centered in the white community, especially in like the coastal areas with more affluent retired folks fighting nuclear energy. So the work that I do is the total opposite. It's the beginning of the fuel chain And so a lot of my colleagues, you know, they've never been to the Southwest, had no idea what is uranium. And so I worked for a long time in that community, but now I'm back home fighting a fight actually in Arizona, even though I live in New Mexico. So I'm gonna talk about both Arizona and New Mexico. But the fight I'm working on right now is called Hall No. So Hall No is our movement. And right now we're experiencing a lot of threats from new proposals for uranium and nuclear production. And I'd like to get into how that connects to you all here. But we're really feeling it. And on the Navajo Nation, our land was mined a lot. So there's a lot of contamination. And now they want to come back and do more. So I'm going to talk a lot about that. And really, how I got involved was because of water, and then the protection of water, also for human health. And then not till later, I learned about all of these other things like climate change and, you know, energy production, United Nations treaties, you know, things like that. So that's my background. And I'm also a student, so I'm actually in grad school. And I always forget that because we're like in the middle of our fight, and our fight is really intense. And so I call myself an activist, an anti-nuclear activist. Lately, I've been trying to do a lot more community organizing, so I'm both, and those are very different things. And and I'm also a grad student. Thank you. Yeah.
Greetings and thank you for giving us this space. My name's Louise Benally. I'm from Big Mountain, Black Mesa, Arizona, and I live right along the Colorado River Basin area, and a lot of the waterways goes into the Colorado River, and it goes back down into the Pacific Ocean, if not on surface, underground. So we have been impacted by extractive fossil fuel energy, and we've fought forever over our grounds in Black Mesa against a big, large coal company who was headquartered here in Denver. So I came here lots of times to protest. Locked down in those buildings over there. That's, you know, how I know Denver, I guess. I know you all have a lot of coal coming from the mountain too, but there's impacted communities there, of course, just as we are down in Black Mesa. And we've battled this for a long time, over 50 years. It finally moved now. The beast in Washington wants to reopen those and let the battle go on, you know, the battle for survival in our sense, because I'm not formally educated like you are, so I'm limited in that language, but it's okay. I'm a fluent Diné speaker, so I can go on to a few levels on that side. So a lot of times, you know, our people are impacted really bad to where it's very ill. The earth itself is sick, the water's sick, the air is sick, and the human and all living things are sick from the pollutants that come from the underground surface. So before coal, there was large uranium mines out there. There's over 1,500 abandoned mines on the Navajo Nation alone. So it's already in the water. When I was conceived, my father was working in a uranium mill where they were shoveling ore to make weapons, you know, and I got exposure through that. So I was born with it, you know, side effects and stuff from it. And it's not good. It's a lot of our people didn't make it because of that. Some got exposed and they got cancer. Some were just born with it. And it took their lives before too long, and there's suffering going on out there in the fields. And so all these activities with mining, extraction of coal, oil, gas, now lithium, and other natural resources, it goes into that river and it gets poisoned. So then the water goes down, and different farmers throughout the region along that Colorado River, they get it in the food. So then they sell it back to the communities, and that's how people consume it and become ill in some cases. So then the animals are impacted by it as well. So it affects everything. Water is life, like she said. It's the base of all life. Without water, there's no life. So in my work, it's always been, for the last 40 years or so, advocating for rights of nature. And it's ongoing in the settings like yours here at a school. And then there's sometimes communities, where a lot of people impacted by different environmental issues host a conference, and they invite somebody from somewhere to give them a lecture or help them understand whatever process is taking place and so forth. So there's a lot of places to learn. It's not always in a classroom. Sometimes it's walking by yourself out in the mountains, or you're by a river and you're learning things by seeing things. So that's the kind of education I have. I was raised as a sheep herder, as my mother was a herbalist and a healer. So she, encouraged that. My father was a worker. He worked wherever he could, for railroads, for uranium mine, and he was a rancher at the same time. He had cattle and animals, and we were taught to take care of that and live with it and get common sense and living with the earth and nature. That's where a lot of my teachings took place. And of course, I became a grandma. I'm a grandma now, and I continue to travel into the communities within my tribe and educate little children about water, why it's important, how it's important, and why that should be drunk more than sodas or sugary drink that will develop into diabetes later on or other health problems. So then I go into their yards, schoolyards, and plant little gardens and hoping to make that change as far as they call it farm to table, but it's just kind of like, along with the kids, I educate their parents, their mothers usually. And so that's the kind of work I do. And then the other job I have is just translating for whoever that's working on self-sufficiency. So I've been doing that quite a bit, but we're trying to get a slaughterhouse going and getting farmers to kind of make a co-op so they could sell to. We have a large population and a large land base, but some have access to water, the San Juan River, and that becomes the Colorado River downstream. So I work with those farmers by just translating and getting products from them, and kind of like a bartering. I take it down to the west side and pass it out to those that can afford to either exchange something for it. If they don't have nothing, it's okay, you can still give them some just so that they will have some, And so we encourage that very much, to be self-sufficient and then turning to the medicine ways, back to the herbal stuff, the natural way of healing. And that's because we're under a threat right now with this Trump guy. He wants to take everything away. You're all aware of it. The food programs, the schools, the involvement with different nationalities, all that he wants to put it on off. So I think right now we're in this stage of adaptation, and not just with ourselves, but also with the land. Like she's saying, you got to be connected and communicate with it so it can help you get through these times. And I don't know exactly when the Creator's going to turn off the human faucet off, but just be ready. It could be any time. That's the only advice I can give you right now, because I had a call last night and somebody's kind of scared. They're trying to smile, laugh, but I can read beyond that. And one of the mountains there is starting to kind of shake, in the northwest. So there's times of change and purification. And we're in that time now with this so-called climate change. And that's beyond us, but we can help ourselves, our communities to understand and adapt. And so over lunch, I met this young man over here. He's hopefully going to be helping us remap, show us the map of the waterways down in our region so we can know where things are at. Because before the colonizers came, we had names for those places, and they're only in our language. But language revitalization, I would like to get a map and put the names back on there. And so you're all welcome to join that, and either locally or you can come and support. So it's good to network with all of us and see how you can help, because the future is in your hands as young people. For some of us, we're getting a little old. So I have my dear sweet daughter helping me get around while I'm here in town, because I'll be so confused. Anyways, thank you, though.
Yeah, great information, right? It's like, this is what it's all about, the water. Like, how many people know we're in a drought, right? Right. So this talk is kind of like that, right? You get a little sip of water, right? But we're in a drought right now. So, like, the knowledge you seek and the knowledge you want is out there, but we have to go to it now, right? There's time limits, there's things like that. We're not even supposed to be having this conversation with this regime in charge, right? But, like, as an indigenous person to this land, you understand that there's never been a good person in charge. There's been people that have been willing to listen, maybe, and there's people that who weren't willing to listen. And we're in those times right now. So, being in the Rockies, it's like if you're standing on top of that mountain, you could probably see a lot farther than me down at the bottom of the valley, right? We've all heard that metaphor before, right? So if y'all are standing on top of the mountain and you're going to tell me which way to go, I'm going to listen to you because I can't see what's going on down here. So consider that, like, these are peaks, mountains, where they can see what we've been taught and reminded to remember and never forget. They can see that path. They can see this cliff that this arrogance of man is walking precariously on and leading us all into, because we forgot. We don't remember. We're believing everything they tell us, and we just go along with it, right? So they won't tell you about Rocky Flats and all the downwinders and everybody and all the pollution that they put into the planet here. Like, that stuff never goes away. That stuff's here forever, right? But they're not going to tell you about that because they're going to build a subdivision on it, and they're going to make money off of you and your children when you come up with these different diseases in your body that they can't find a source from. But it's like, oh, one generation ago, we just forgot to tell them that we used to store uranium, whatever, whatever 235 underground here, or we used to do bomb testing sites here, or this mine just spilled all of its contaminants into this water where we just built a new subdivision, right? So they bank on the fact that our memories are short, right? They even gave us the tools and devices to destroy our own memory. Like, you don't need to remember anything anymore. Here, put it in this machine, and we'll tell you if it's worthy or not to remember it. Actually, that's not even how you remember it. Actually, we're going to rewrite history, and this is AI. This is exactly how it was, right? These are the first people of the land, not them. You know, this is the way of law, not that, right? And you feel like you may not be able to take part in this. But in 1882, I believe, it was the Colorado Supreme Court that did away with riparian law, which meant that if you lived along the river, you couldn't disturb the flow for the person downstream. You couldn't contaminate the flow of water for the person downstream. In 1882, they said, oh, we're going to go with prior allocation, which means if you got there first, then that's your water, and you can do whatever you want with it. Right, because the mining companies came in, right? They took all of us indigenous people and forced us out of the area, and all these mining companies, and everybody started to take control of the land. So now they're like, it's our water, right? They just got here not too long ago, but they're polluting and poisoning all of our lifeways, right? And that's from in Denver, right? We have a conscious mind. We can move towards the idea of giving a river living status. They say that's not even possible, but I'm like, yeah, what you said the world we're living in is impossible, and this is a hell that I never dreamed of, right? So it's like, if some of these species and ideas and things aren't going to be coming back because they're going extinct, then why aren't we taking our chance to make these things possible? Because there's nothing holding us back, right? Except the knowledge of knowing what's going on upstream and downstream, right? And maybe some of that stuff does affect us. And maybe Denver is a place where we can make a big impact, right? And so this is just us coming together, you know, and remembering these things, and then seeking each other out, because we're showing you where we are in this location, along these rivers, you know. And the more we divest from these cities that are destroying the rivers and go back to these natural ways, that's healing, right? The rivers are poison. The rivers are the lifeblood of the earth. And if they're all dammed up, they're not going to be able to clean themselves, right? So, that's one idea. There's a whole million other ideas that we can have, but we don't know unless we connect. So, I mean, I know we're running, closer and closer with less time. So we can go through maybe again and we can highlight some of the issues, like Leona wanted to talk about the reason why Denver does play a role in the Colorado River and the mining down south. These are things that the more it becomes apparent, the actions that we take are more decided for us. So maybe I can give Leona a little bit more time right now to kind of describe the work that she's doing, and then 5 minutes, and then we can give a pass on to maybe a couple more pressing issues, just to remind people, like, hey, like that water faucet is already turned off for so many people. There's no idea of water just coming out of a magical sink anymore. Water is evaporating, disappearing, and like they said, this is the water that's been here forever. How horrible of a time to be the ones that let that go away, right? So it's like, it's up to us, basically. But yeah, I'll let Leona go ahead and speak a little bit more about the current work that she's doing, and then we'll be able to pass it on to our other speakers to kind of round it out. But thank you one more time.
Another mic. Hi, thanks. Hello again. Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm actually surprised how many people showed up, so thank you so much. We usually, when I do events, at least when we advertise events for learning about uranium or nuclear, we never get this many people. So next time I'm going to advertise about protecting water and our mountains. And I'm not even going to say uranium on the flyer. So, but yeah, I think some of you might have seen the literature on the table coming in. So yeah, I know we have, like we're saying, these treasures of information that I'm learning a lot. I'm taking a lot of notes myself. I didn't grow up speaking my language or practicing our culture, but it's very true. You have to know this stuff. And so I'm very fortunate. I had to learn it. So it wasn't like I was growing up and my parents taught me all these things, and it was in a different way that the knowledge came to me. So if you make mistakes, you will find out. So, and then also the opposite is true. And you're doing the right thing, you'll know. So anyways, going back to some of the work I'm doing, there's a lot, so much. And I want to thank the organizers for hosting this event. I really wanted to I'm really happy to be here, and I've been wanting to come to speak in Colorado. I don't have the experience as Louise. I actually haven't really been to Denver very much. So, and I definitely never was locked down in Denver or anywhere, really, honestly. I don't do that kind of work. The work I do is really boring. I like to call it policy work, and that's probably sounds more boring. But yeah, and usually when I'm done talking, everyone in the room looks really depressed. So I'm gonna try really hard not to do that. But that's, yeah, so I'm a really good self-promoter too. This is how I get lots of people to join our movement. Yeah. It's really sad. I'm really sad about how many people don't work on nuclear, but now, like, this room full of people is just making me happy. I know you guys didn't know you're coming here to learn about nuclear, but you're gonna learn. You're gonna learn a lot, I hope. So just really quickly, I'm just gonna run through a bunch of stuff. How many of you have heard of the doctrine of discovery? Okay, how many of you have heard of the 1872 mining law? How many of you know what uranium is used for? Okay, yeah, that's great. So just a quick survey. So when I do these talks, a lot of people have never heard of the doctrine of discovery. And so the doctrine of discovery is really the basis. That's where that's what I attribute to all of the stuff that we're dealing with. I think it really started with the doctrine of discovery, because our people had our own ways. We had all of this stuff already happening. But because of the doctrine of discovery, that basically is an opinion of some dudes in Europe that it's totally okay to go genocide and take over other people's lands and resources, all over the world. And not only that it's okay, but that it's God's will. Okay, so this, I don't really buy this, but this is still the basis for a lot of our laws in the colonized countries and Western, whatever, all of this stuff. And that itself, the doctrine of discovery, is not a law itself. But yet, we're still fighting a lot of laws because of that. And then there's this other thing, a lot of the work I'm dealing with has to do with 1872 mining law. So 1872 mining law is very similar. It was, but it is a law. And so it was established to steal our land. And so basically, any valuable minerals the United States deems valuable are, I think I just repeated myself. So these so-called valuable minerals, they can be mined on any U.S. public lands, and then the people mining can take ownership of the land. It was basically designed to steal our land, so for manifest destiny. And it included gold, copper, lead, molybdenum, uranium, a bunch of stuff. And so now, this is the law we're dealing with all across the country. So in the Black Hills, at Oak Flat, at the Grand Canyon, on Mount Taylor in New Mexico, and all over the state of Colorado. So the 1872 mining law is very difficult to fight, and I don't have a lot of time to talk more about 1872 mining law, but I'm just using these two, and then I can go into the Navajo Nation Treaty and all these other things that created the situation where we're at. Another one is the Dawes Act. So on Navajo Nation, we have allotments, and that's another thing that makes land jurisdiction confusing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the work that I do is, again, really boring. A lot of it's fighting permit applications, so following environmental impact statement proposals and going to public hearings and educating people and saying, hey, can you write a letter? Can you send this letter to this agency by this deadline? Which today, if anyone remembers, there's actually a comment deadline today for the site-wide environmental impact statement of the Los Alamos National Labs. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I think it's important because Los Alamos National Labs, we call it LANL for short. This is really one of the, I don't know I don't know what the word is right now. A friend of mine from the area, she's Pueblo, she didn't like us using the term birthplace because we called it the birthplace of nuclear colonialism. But she does actual birth work and she does actual work with women. So she really didn't like us using that term. But yeah, so Los Alamos National Labs right now, they're trying to expand the site to build more plutonium pits. And what does this have to do with Colorado? Probably not a whole lot directly, but the nuclear industrial complex, it's like so separated that it almost is invisible, that you wouldn't see your connection to something in New Mexico or probably Japan or Germany or Australia very easily. But how many of you have heard of the company called Energy Fuels? Okay, a few of you. Probably because you had to learn about it for the interview this morning, or I don't know if you were there. So Energy Fuels is a uranium company that owns the uranium mill in this picture that is at the Grand Canyon, just south of the Grand Canyon, and they own the only uranium mill in the country right now. And so a long time ago, there were a lot of uranium mills. I don't know how many. But like Louise was saying, there's a lot of abandoned uranium mines. So, gosh, I was trying to make this quick. So uranium is used for weapons and energy. But in the beginning, it was just used for weapons. So when the United States was mining, they were the only entity purchasing uranium until about the 70s, and that's when nuclear energy came online. So all of the mines before nuclear energy were only for weapons, and all of those were abandoned. And Colorado has the most abandoned uranium mines in the country. Navajo Nation has about 523, the US EPA counts, but the people say it's more like 1,500 or 2,000, what Louise was saying. So we have the uranium mines, and then we have a uranium mill. So the uranium mill in this picture, right now, that's the only one in the country that's operating. And the United States is in a situation where it is pushing, because of Trump, pushing for more mining to build more weapons. But they're not gonna tell you that. They're gonna say, we need uranium for nuclear energy, because nuclear energy is clean and carbon-free and blah, blah, blah. That's because they only count the footprint of nuclear energy at the power plant. They don't count anything before, and they don't count anything after. Okay, so now, this is, I'm sorry, I'm just drinking coffee. Val, can you get me some water? I'm like super dehydrated.
I think
I should be drinking water.
Doing a great job. I mean, she's basically highlighting in the work we can do, you know.
That's what I'm getting to.
Is getting to. I mean, I don't know how many people need to start heading out or anything, or if there's people that can stay afterwards. But we will, if anyone has questions, we'll try to get to those afterwards. But she's going to continue explaining the importance of why we're all connected.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So there's only one mill in the country right now, and the United States Department of Energy is really, really trying to pump a lot of money into White Mesa Mill, because the White Mesa Mill is the only place developing uranium. And so they are also, they have a license to do two things: to process uranium ore to make yellow cake, and to process this other stuff called alternate feed, which is basically any kind of radioactive waste that might have uranium in it, to store the waste, essentially. So that's how they were operating, because the price of uranium, it's been down for a long time, but now it's up again, so all these uranium companies want to start because of this push that nuclear energy is clean. So the reason I'm here and explaining all of this is because this company, Energy Fuels' headquarters is in Lakewood, Colorado, very close to where we are today. And I think there's a lot of things y'all can do to help in our fight to fight the company. This company, we were fighting the transport. The mine is on Havasupai land. The mill is on Ute land, but the transport is through Louise's community and a lot of other Diné communities and Paiute and other tribes. But the thing is, now they want to expand the mill to develop what's called rare earth elements. So Trump is saying we need all these other things for new technology. And then also they're calling it a critical mineral. So basically they're just making up, well, critical minerals are a real thing, but the federal government just makes up all these things so it can access our resources and use any laws to get to it. So the Navajo Nation has a law that says no uranium mining. So what is stopping Trump from trying to get our uranium for more nuclear weapons? So this is what I'm here to talk about, is to tell folks we need to be highly vigilant, we need to be like super aware, and we need everybody's help to stop this, because it's like one of the scariest things for me, because our president, Navajo Nation president, is also a Trumper. So we're in a very bad situation right now, but there's even more levels that gets worse and worse. So there's now a proposal for a new mill, which would be the second mill in the country, which could also have a lot of power because it'll process uranium, and it would be one of only 2 in the country. And that is also here in Colorado. And so Colorado has a lot of problems. I live in New Mexico that has tons of nuclear stuff. The world's largest open pit uranium mine, the world's largest uranium spill, the world's only deep geological repository. I can go on and on about New Mexico, and I'm just now learning about Colorado. And so that's what I came here to talk about, and to share this information, and to see who's interested in working on some of these issues, and to see what can be done locally, regionally, statewide, nationally, internationally, all of it. So I think that was the gist of it. Thank you so much.
Pretty impressive. She literally... Definitely. I mean, thank you for all that work and that information to be able to like get it in our head that quick. Like you heard earlier, Pat was saying her son Buck was also fighting for water up there in land in the Taos, and where the Rio Grande, which if you all know, the Rio Grande also was extremely politicized when there was barbed wire placed inside of there, and humans, you know, these are migratory routes that humans have been passing through forever. So for now it to be a war zone, it's insane. So that's the other part of the water, is like what's happening everywhere. So I can give it to Pat one more time, and then Louise, and we can kind of just tie these things up. And if you want to follow up with everyone afterwards or online, please do so, because like I said, this is just the beginning.
Grandma's got a phone call. The kids are calling. Well, one, I wanted to thank you for that. Sorry, that threw my train of thought. So I want to point out the doctrine of discovery. I'm doing a lot of work on the doctrine of discovery at the moment with matriarchs from Onondaga Nation, Mohawk Nation. Because one, the Bear Clan mother over there says, mother law has to be reinstated now. And so there's a whole process around that. But what I want to say about the doctrine of discovery is Ruth Bader Ginsburg cited the doctrine of discovery in 2006 as a legal basis in a case. So you said it wasn't really a legal mechanism. It's a total legal mechanism, actually, in sort of indirectly, in this weird sort of way. You have to kind of look at it. But it's playing out, and it's a way of establishing, it's a way of interfering with treaty rights. It's a way of interfering with many things. But I'll say that we're also working with, I think we're up to 14 communities of nuns. And these nuns are saying that they're going to join this campaign that Michelle Shenandoah, Mohawk Oneida attorney, has said that she's starting a campaign called Complicit No More, and calling for people to declare themselves complicit no more with the doctrine of discovery. So that's another place to make a movement and to say, you know, what about that? How did land rights come about through this magical thinking from a particular spiritual path, right? So that's one thing I wanted to name. And the other thing is I'm very involved also with about 18 different communities in Land Back. Land back means different things to different people. Right now, what I feel like my role is in the situation that I'm in is I keep using this gesture of like, I said, she's trying to say something. Back off, you know? And if it takes Indigenous relationship and Indigenous rights in those places to be able to let this Mother Earth have her say, it's hard to say this in an academic institution, but human beings don't have to figure all this out. The life knows how to do life. The land knows how to thrive. But we got to give it some space. So I would also make a call for supporting land back movement, which is the return of land back to Indigenous stewardship. Those are also reparations. And I guess I'll end with, you talked about the boringness of fighting permitting. That is actually how it's done. That's the biggest activist movement with mining, water, minerals. And as I was a part of that with Amigos Bravos, we were fighting the molybdenum mine, never can say that, outside of Taos, and that was poisoning the Red River, which was a major tributary to the Rio Grande. And so you can show up for these public hearings. They're going to have some, well, who knows under this administration. But in theory, they're going to have public hearings. And even if you're not a big legal person, you can show up in other ways. So I just wanted to give a little spoken word of how I made my testimony at one of the hearings. So it went like this. Molly Core, hey Molly Core, what on earth are you fighting for? Is it Unical? Is that your pal? Well, can't you see? They think they're free of every responsibility. Now from here to over there, they just don't care. Mountains, water, people too, they don't worry about me and you. The bottom line, that's what's on their mind. Gotta grab it, try to nab it each and every dime. But when they're through with me, through with you, what's left behind down inside that mine? Well, up above it, down below it, on the sides, now don't you know it, it's not real good what's in the neighborhood. Water running cloudy blue, no fish to eat, you know it's true. And when you try to let that water in to the place where your grandma's crops have been, oh man, no, don't you even do it. Not if you intend to try to chew it. But what about those 50 head cattle running around, not quite dead? Did they try to drink from the river? Or is it just the grass that makes them quiver? But all that stuff might seem kind of small when you really stop and think about it all. We don't even know how far it really goes. 10 years from now, you might have so many doctor bills you'd like to just drown. What about the kids? Let's stop and think. What we gonna leave behind for them to drink? Do you think that they will understand if we never even stop to lift a hand to stop this machine that's tearing up the land? Yeah, the one that puts the paycheck into your hand. And what will they say when the dust finally settles, comes to light, cleanup would fill the kettles, new kind of work for me and you, doing our best to clean up the nasty brew, trying to bring the river back from the dead, trying to turn the river from blue back to red. Now where is the harm? Why sound the alarm? Animals, minerals, children too, when they look back on us, they'll see it's true. We love this place that we call home, and there ain't no reason they're gonna have to roam. And I'll just say that I had to like drop that and run and get the kids to whatever their next thing was. And I hear this clackety clackety coming out of this church parish hall. It was the head of mining and minerals. And she was in tears. And she said, I heard that. I heard that. So use your voice, please.
That's great. Wow. We're going to have a music show next. So anyways, I guess just network, connect with whoever, and help however way you can. You know, when I understand from these other students from the past, they said, Grandma, if you need something, we're here for you. In this campus, this is UC Davis, they said, if you need land, you know, surveys or maps or, you know, ways to bring sustainable development into your community, we're willing to do this. Because we're students, we're learning, and we want to know more. We want to learn how. So they, started coming. It's been 39 years ago. And, of course, we're all old now, but they still do it, and you can do it too. As young people, find a way to help Leona, network with Pat, network with me, network with Reuben, and campuses need to activate themselves again. You have to reinvent yourself and do not fear no evil, because that's what's trying to put fear in you, to make you isolate yourself, being scared, being afraid, And he's not going to be there for too long, because he's, rattling too many cages, like the senior citizen with their Social Security, people with food support from the federal government. That is a government. They're supposed to help the people and assist them in where they need help. But yet this guy there, he wants to steal everything from every department and probably push that button for the next planet. But we just got to network and stay connected and continue to move forward and have common sense on how you can maneuver through these times. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So yeah, I think I personally would love some help. I mean, we could use some help. There's some information, Hall no, but the reality is I'm here to ask you, or to let you know that I'm here as a resource for you who want to fight nuclear in Colorado. So if there's anyone who's interested in organizing, the best thing to do, I think, is autonomous organizing. So getting your own crew together, building your own base, setting your own goals. I mean, even with the film project, I mean, some of you, I don't know if all of you in the class might just start your own production company, like Surrey did, You don't have to always be Prairie Films. You don't have to be Hall no. You can start your own thing, do your own thing, and there's people here that have done it that can help write letters. The one thing I would ask you to do, though, is to write a letter to your elected officials and just let them know, hey, I heard about this uranium mill, because most likely your elected officials have no idea. So if Colorado has the most abandoned uranium mines, then Colorado could be the most targeted, because those are, that means there's a lot of uranium here. So there's a lot of work that can be done, and there's a lot of work we're doing with Hall no, and then in New Mexico, we just got word that our Sacred Mountain is under attack by the same company we're fighting. So we have a lot of work to do, but I don't see a movement in Colorado, so that's what I'm hoping to see next time I come. Thanks.
All right, I just want to quit holding it like a poet. Sorry about that. I kept holding the mic to my face like a rapper or something. I just wanted to, again, thank you all just for sitting through and listening. Not that it was unbearable. It's like amazing to get this, but I know people have timely things that they need to get to. But again, this is all we got is us, right? And this is how we win, by bringing us closer together. But unless we know each other, that comfort and that ability to trust, because it all moves at the speed of trust, right? If we can't trust one another, then how are we going to be one body of water, right? So it's like, okay, let's get that out of the way now. And now that we know each other in a good way, we can bring these waters together. So I just want to toss it over to the next part and say thank you one more time.